Hello, and as always, thank you for watching us here at Palos Heights Community Channel 4. My name is Carol Steffen, and I'm lucky today because I'm inside and not out in the street. And so this is my pleasure to be with a friend of mine and a respected author. I'm seated next to Susan Jeffrey Bouchon, right? And the Jeffrey part is after her mom and dad, and her mom is a very, very good friend of mine. I'm going to read you a little bit. Well, I'll tell you first the story. I thought it was the first time we had met. When Susan was just starting out being a health coach or that type of thing, I had a granddaughter who was fearful of dogs, and Susan said, well, why don't I come in? This is years ago when we filmed in a very, very small studio. And so I brought my granddaughter in. Susan came in with a big dog, I might add, and did some testing and trying to desensitize her, basically, to being afraid of this dog. And it was just a fun experience. It was the first time we had done something like that. And it was really a long time ago because that granddaughter is now a senior in college. So it was very successful. She does not own a dog and probably will never, but it worked. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about Susan. I'm going to read it because there's so much to tell about the author. Susan Jeffrey Bouchon is an award-winning, best-selling author, investigative health coach, and an international speaker. She helps find solutions for people and animals who are struggling with physical or emotional problems. She is a former environmental biologist and research scientist whose own health challenges led her to explore natural health, healing, and numerous holistic modalities. She is an avid researcher, an advocate of health freedom, environmental awareness, and is a non-GMO activist. Susan is the founder of Get Set Tapping, Tap into Balance, and My Pet Healer. Her passions include helping people overcome life's traumas by releasing negative emotions such as fear, anxiety, and grief, and utilizing her years of experience in research to educate individuals in private sessions and in group events for schools, hospitals, businesses, and organizations. Susan believes the body has an incredible wisdom and innate ability to heal itself if given what it needs. Through identifying sensitivities, imbalances, and stressors, she has helped thousands of people optimize their health and excel beyond their limitations. Susan offers remote services to help those who are unable to travel to her. Wow. What an amazing biography that is for you.
Thank you.
And it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you.
The book that I referred to that was with my granddaughter was Tap into Balance. Is that the name of it? Tap into Joy. I'm sorry. That was her first book. Tap into Joy was her first book. The book that we're going to talk about today is her 10th book. So obviously she's a very, very prolific authoress. And this is basically what the book looks like. And we'll have a close-up of it, I'm sure. But there's a whole host of books here that are listed from 1 to 9 in front of us here. And this is number 10. This is 10, right? Yeah. And it's called Bridging Medicine and Miracles. Essential Truths, Key Practices, and a New Perspective on Health and Healing by Susan Jeffrey Bouchon. Wow. I tried to look through it. There's 12 chapters. I could spend a month on each chapter. It's just an amazing array of information on a vast scope. Tell me about it.
Okay. Yeah, I tried to kind of summarize everything that I've learned and seen and practiced for, almost 20 years. Things that inhibit people's health and things that contribute to their health. So that can be anything from foods, environmental stressors, emotional issues, and also things that will help to facilitate health and healing. Just things such as mindset, spiritual practices, self-care is obviously a very important one. So I go into detail on each of those. There's a chapter on each portion to explain them in further depth.
It's just amazing. The chapters, basically, I guess this would be the basic underline, you are the healer. Tell me that philosophy, that we are our own healers.
Okay. Most of us turn our health over to someone else. Sometimes it's our doctor. It could be, any number of people. But we turn our health and the responsibility for keeping us healthy over to someone else, when in reality, it's really all up to us. And the book is designed to empower people to realize that they have an innate wisdom. The body was created in such a way that we'll never fully understand how it works. Even, with this, as sophisticated as medicine is, they still will never fully understand healing. And I find that healing is much more basic and simple and innate than we realize. And we all have that power within us to heal, to seek out and ask for solutions, and to find and create healing in our own bodies.
Basically, so are you saying go research for yourself type of thing? Try to diagnose it yourself. And we're not taking anything negative about the medical practicing doctors, of
Right.
course. This is totally different from that. If you're not feeling well, then seek help. But there's, in fact, there was an article in the paper, interestingly, today. I brought it from the Wall Street Journal. And it said, based on mounting research, doctors are prescribing nutrient-rich foods as an antidote to depression and anxiety. With the help of high-profile chefs, they're doing it deliciously too. So this thought of helping yourself, and maybe through eating correctly, taking care of yourself, exercising, is really a positive thing, and people need to do that.
Absolutely. And Hippocrates said, let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. And that's pretty much what that article is saying. Our food, if it is properly grown and prepared, is an incredible medicine in and of itself. It's just that most of the food that we're eating today has become more toxic. Our air and our water, everything is, contributing to our toxic load instead of nurturing our health. But if you eat right, food can do so much to help us emotionally and physically.
I remember you were kind of leading component against GMO. Tell us about that. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Explain what GMO is.
Yeah, I started on this rampage about GMOs about 18 years ago. And GMO is an acronym for genetically modified organism. So it's any type of food that is genetically engineered, where they take the DNA from one species and force it into the genes of another. And something that would never happen in nature. This is not a hybrid process. A lot of foods, they do a hybrid process to, make the food better in some way, or enhance the taste or the appearance. But this is actually taking DNA from a different species altogether. So you might be taking, a gene from a fish and putting it into a tomato or something like that. And they're done for several reasons. They can be done for herbicide tolerance, so they can douse a field with a specific herbicide, and that specific plant that's been engineered to withstand that pesticide or herbicide won't be affected by it, but everything else will die. So that's the main reason. They can also be done for insecticide producing cells in the plant, and also to kind of ward off viruses. So, the foods that are genetically engineered right now in the U.S. are corn and soy are the big ones, canola and cottonseed. So those are basic components of vegetable oil. So anything that's made in vegetable oil, or margarine made with vegetable oil, is potentially genetically engineered. Anything with corn, soy, canola, or cottonseed, I generally will stay away from unless it's organic. Right now, the organic standards state that it can't be GMO. But there's also zucchini, yellow crookneck squash, which are genetically engineered for virus resistance. Most people don't think that those are things that they would think are healthy, but they can often be genetically engineered. And our body doesn't really see them as food, it sees them more as toxins. So, when we eat these things that appear to be healthy, our body actually goes into a defense mode, and it stimulates a detoxification process rather than being able to assimilate those nutrients. So it's important.
Well, your group was so successful in making GMO people so aware of GMO, and so now organic foods are so much more plentiful now than they've ever been before. So that's a way of recognizing the success of people and educating people.
Yes, absolutely. And it was a lot of work and a long battle. And kind of my mentor in that area was Jeffrey Smith. And I've done gone to Washington and done a lot of protesting and fighting and standing up to label GMOs. And while we weren't successful in getting GMOs labeled, a lot of companies voluntarily now label that they don't put GMOs in the food. And you cannot walk through an aisle in a grocery store and not see the non-GMO project verified label on certain foods. Even on pet foods now, they're advertising that they're taking the GMOs out because they know that many people are trying to avoid them, and they would not eat the food if they knew that the food was genetically engineered. It's just that most people don't know this. They assume that our government would protect us from anything that would harm us. But in this case, that's, not not the case.
Well, it's a very successful campaign and continues. And
Yes.
continues. You are the healer. How about flaws in the medical system?
Well, I actually work in the medical system
know you do.
part-time. But, there are a lot of things that I think are causing issues for people. They do, for one, turn their health over to their doctor. Medicine has become very standardized. There's specific protocols that must be followed, and they're no longer really looking at the patient as an individual. It's kind of a herd mentality. In medicine in general, I'm fortunate to work for a private practice that, is very caring and offers very individualized treatment. But for the most part, if you go into a hospital, you're going to get very standard run-of-the-mill treatment.
Sure.
You're not going to have many options. If you refuse a treatment, you're often discredited. Sometimes the doctor will refuse to see you. They'll literally kick you out of the practice if you don't, follow certain...
Take the medicines.
Yeah, if you don't take certain medications. And as we know, medications a lot of times are toxic. There's a lot of toxins, from food dyes. Fluoride is one that's it's in our water, but it's showing up in more and more drugs now, and people react to that. So,
what is a toxin? Is there a definition for a toxin?
well, it's anything that is against life. So, anything that harms a cellular process or your nutrition in some way. So it's basically a pollutant or a poison.
Okay.
And at a low level, most of us can tolerate toxins, and there's a very long latency period for disease with toxins. So you can ingest some GMOs, and chances are you're not going to fall over or have any very acute reaction. But over time, it contributes to disease in our body. So a toxin is anything that takes away from our health and contributes to illness.
This is my favorite. Chapter 4, the hidden toxins on your table. Want to elaborate on that a little bit, as far as there's so many?
There are. And as we've already discussed, GMOs is pretty much a hidden toxin because it's not well known that they're in most foods. So if you're not really trying hard to avoid them, you're probably eating them in every meal for certain. And there's all sorts of toxins, such as food dyes. A lot of yellow dye number 5, for instance, is very toxic. Red dye number 40. Many foods have dyes, and you would never suspect it. Many healthy breakfast cereals will have yellow dye in them, which you would never think. Marshmallows, which obviously is not a healthy food, but that will contain blue dye. Okay. So things that don't even appear to be dyed will have dye. Salmon, if it's farm raised, is usually fed food that has red dye in it, so the meat will be pinker. And in nature, the fish would be able to swim to deeper depths and get into colder waters, and develop the proper fat content and the proper coloring. But because it's raised in a farm, it's different conditions, so they actually feed it something that will dye the tissue. So if you have a sensitivity to red dye, for instance, you can be reacting to it and not know it because you're eating salmon and you think that's healthy, but there's some hidden issues
I know
there.
that you're a healing doctor type of, and you'll do testing for and desensitize people. How do you find out that you're allergic to red dye? You're not feeling well. How would I find out that I was allergic to red dye?
Yeah, most people don't know, but they just have some sort of symptom or problem that they're experiencing. So one of the things that I do is I have some testing equipment that's based on energy medicine, and it helps me to see what things are causing imbalances in your body. So I might be able to detect that red dye or maybe an artificial sweetener, or even something healthy, a specific vegetable or fruit might be causing you issues. So I can determine that from the testing that I do.
So you could make me aware that to avoid that type of stuff.
Exactly.
But as an individual, we need to take on the responsibility of feeding ourselves well and keeping ourselves healthy. So it comes back to us as an individual.
Absolutely.
Okay, the next one, the trouble with technology, when smart is not so smart.
Yes.
Yes.
That is a
You're
big
shining
topic.
up. Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's a big topic, and the one that has recently risen to the top of my radar. And really, the reason for that is that it's made me extremely sick. About 3 years ago, I started getting sick. My health was deteriorating, and it all began when the smart meter was installed on my house. And I didn't know that a smart meter can cause problems. Okay. So for a year or more, my health kind of continued to decline, And then I got really sick. I literally spent 4 months in bed. I couldn't even function other than, getting up for, pertinent things. But I realized that it was the smart meter that had actually triggered the illness for me, and it caused all sorts of things. Severe fatigue. I'd be sitting here and I just want to fall asleep. It was almost like a narcoleptic situation where I would almost want to pass out numerous times throughout the day. I had a lot of hair loss. I had thyroid issues. My thyroid was switching between hyperactive and hypoactive. So there's all sorts of symptoms that go along with that. My brain was not working right. Like my memory would just completely shut off at times. My brain would feel like it's floating. My eyes would burn. Just so many symptoms. I developed a lymphatic tumor. My labs were all out of whack. My lymphocytes were 3 times the normal level. So I had all sorts of major issues going on in my body, leading to a very progressed disease state. And when I started understanding that it could have been triggered by the meter, I ordered some specific instruments that measure radio frequency, which is the type of radiation that's emitted by the smart meter, and realized how significant these spikes were, and then also realized some other major contributing factors in my home. I had have a landline phone, but at the time I had a cordless phone, and that would send the meter off the charts. I also had a cell phone, and especially when I was sick, I kept the phones, sometimes the cordless phone and the portable phone, or the cell phone with me at all times, and I also had Wi-Fi in the house. Well, those things were all contributing so much to my health crisis. So I got rid of all of that stuff.
I have to stop you just for a second. The Wi-Fi, what is bothering you? I mean, what is it?
Okay, so the Wi-Fi is continuously sending out 24/7 a frequency, 2,450 hertz, that it's sending out into the whole house and even outside of the home. So for instance, if you turn on your computer or your cell phone and you go to connect to the Wi-Fi, and it might give you 20 or 30 people's Wi-Fi that you can connect to if you knew their password. So your signal is not only extending well beyond the confines of your own home, but it's extending into your neighbors' homes, and likewise theirs is extending into yours. So for me, I know I'm picking up neighbors all the way down the block. And anyway, so not only are we being bombarded with our own radio signals, but we're also being bombarded by everyone else's. So these things are pulsing through our bodies, and they're causing a lot of harm. Standard industry statements are that it only harms us if it heats tissue. So there's been a lot of studies recently about brain tumors. And I've worked in conjunction with someone who works with the California Brain Tumor Association. And yes, if you're holding a phone up to your head, you have a much higher incidence of getting a brain tumor, either a glioma or an acoustic neuroma. And they warn you to keep it at least an inch away from your body. Nobody reads the fine print, and when you click on I agree to the terms when you set up your phone, you never see that because who's going to read all of this? But it's actually in there. So if you're holding the phone, you're actually violating the safety standards of the industry. Or if you're holding it up to your head, or you have it in your pocket or in your purse right up against your body, some women tuck it into their bra, it's up against your body, and it's in violation of the safety standards for the thermal effect. But the issue with Wi-Fi and with all of these signals are that there's a huge amount of scientific evidence mounting about the non-thermal effects. So that means the effect that it's having on us, even if it's not close enough to us to actually heat up and burn our tissue. So you can have a Wi-Fi router 10 feet away, and it's actually being absorbed by the cells in your body. Microwaves heat food, but based on the fact that they vibrate the water molecules. Well, we have a lot of water in our body, and it's causing all sorts of problems at a cellular level. It's causing issues with the calcium sensors on our cell and causing an influx of calcium into our cells, which is basically interfering with all of our cellular processes.
Susan, that's really scary. When you think of how many people walk down the street, children, babies in strollers, they give them as a toy as the cell phone to play and poke at. I
know, and babies are much more susceptible to damage because their skulls are so much thicker that it penetrates their body, it penetrates their brain pretty much all the way through. Definitely at a deeper level than it impacts an adult. And all of the safety testing that was only probably 20 years ago that they did the standards. Obviously technology has changed significantly since then, but was done on like a 6-foot tall military guy. So they based those standards on an adult man in good physical health, and not on the average person who might be even more susceptible.
In reality, though, that's so much a part of our lives now.
It is.
Where do you see that? I mean, if you were queen and could change things, what would? I mean, that's so much. I'm an old adult, and I carry the cell phone and have it in my pocket. And
absolutely.
And these children start off as babies, and they have a long life to live.
Right. And it's a long latency period, again, where it takes a long time for you to see damage. But the issue for children, especially for girls, is that they're born with all of the egg follicles that they'll ever have in their life. So any potential children that they might have are being impacted by everything that they're doing. So even for a pregnant woman, if she's on her phone while she's pregnant, her little baby is being irradiated, and those egg follicles for the next generation are being impacted. And studies have shown that the radio frequency radiation is causing mitochondrial damage, which will mean possible genetic defects and infertility. So, my biggest fear is for the next generation or two, how this is going to impact them. Yes, we're all very much dependent on technology now, and I'm not against using technology, but I am all for using technology in a safer way. Because, for instance, we have computers in our home, but they're wired via an Ethernet cord. We don't have Wi-Fi. We use shielding fabrics to shield anything. We've had our smart meter removed. We had to pay to have it removed, and we pay a monthly opt-out fee. But it was causing such tremendous
And have you seen a
damage.
huge difference in your own home and with you?
Absolutely.
Oh, have you?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
a huge difference. And honestly, and my doctor concurs that I probably would not be alive right now if I hadn't figured this out and taken the precautions and the steps that I have. I'm still being impacted because I'm still picking up all of my neighbors' use. My neighbors all have smart meters, and they're all trying to communicate with mine, so they're sending these pulse frequencies through my home. So I can feel that, and I have to actually escape to areas of the country that don't have a lot of radiation every now and then. I just got back yesterday, actually, because one of the things that happens is it really affects my brain. My brain feels like it's floating. I can't think. It basically...
Is it cumulative? I mean,
it is cumulative.
Is it?
Our exposure is definitely cumulative, which is a big issue, because especially for children, because they're using it for so many years. We've only been using it heavily for maybe 10 years or so. But these children are growing up with it, and they're dependent, and many are already addicted to it. So their chances are that they will never stop using it. But I do escape to areas where there's no radiation or very low levels, so that my brain can kind of recuperate. So I did that intentionally so that I could talk somewhat intelligently with you today.
And you are. Maybe I should go there. Quickly.
But really, last week, I probably wouldn't be able to sit here and carry on this conversation with you. It gets to be that bad. Yeah, it's very scary because, now they just came out with a study recently showing that adolescents their brain is being impacted, their memory and their recall. And it is really scary, because what's going to happen 10, 20 years down the road, So like I said, I'm for technology. I'm just for doing it in a safer way. I don't use a cell phone at all. I used to use it all the time. I admit I was completely addicted. I would be carrying on 3 different conversations at the same time all the time. But I have one, but I keep it off just for emergency purposes. And I might turn it on once every month or so just to make sure that it still works. But I've completely gotten away from using it. As I said, I've removed the smart meter, totally got rid of the cordless phones. So I think a big takeaway for anyone who listens, they might not be willing to take a lot of drastic measures. In the book, I point out tons of things that you can do.
Yes, you do.
But definitely, if you have a cordless phone in your house, get rid of it. That's so important, because that is outputting radiation 24/7 into your home. And anywhere that phone would work is being highly irradiated.
Really?
So even a lot of times outside on your patio, or maybe even in your driveway or whatever, your being irradiated from that phone.
Wow. So I can blame my cordless phone and not getting old, huh? Can't blame getting old for my memory going up some of the chimney. Okay,
Yes.
that I know chapter 4 and 5 are an amazing part of this book. It took me a long time to get through them. I bought this book through Amazon, because her mom told me that she had written number 10 book and working on number 11 book. So I had to get it and read it, and it took me, it's just overwhelming. The amount of information is overwhelming. You have to, you read a chapter and let it digest, hopefully, and maybe act upon it. Okay, chapter 6, ethical consumerism and environmental responsibility. There's a mouthful.
Yes. Big words.
Yes.
That is really that we have to be good stewards of our environment. There are things that we can do in a safer, better way. And that's interesting also. I just thought of something with the technology. It's almost like secondhand smoke. When people smoke, you have the option to be around them, to smoke yourself, to stay away from it. With the technology, you don't have an option. So like when I go into a public place, I know that I can only be there for so long. I knew coming here today I would be affected by all the cell towers that are right outside.
Yes.
There's 3 giant cell towers right outside the parking lot. I knew that was going to impact me. So now tonight, I might have all kinds of problems related to just being here for this time.
Okay.
So, from an ethical perspective, every text someone sends or every call they receive impacts all of us in the vicinity, and it's about 20, 30 feet away. I know if one of my family members is upstairs and they send a text, I can tell because my meters go off downstairs. So it's that far that it goes off the scale and is actually at a level that's not healthy to us. So, we really need to be mindful. Every time we use our phone, we have to think about not only it's the impact it's having on us, but it's affecting everyone around us. So if, someone's on the phone and their child, is sitting right down here, or, their children are all around, it has a big impact. And for instance, Wi-Fi in schools, everyone is being irradiated in the school for 6 or 7 hours. All the children are being irradiated. The teachers, many are women of childbearing age, and they're all constantly exposed to this radiation. So everything we can do to cut that down helps everybody. Everything we can recycle helps everybody.
Okay.
So it's just about being mindful about the things that you do personally, and then also the choices you make. When you buy something, you're supporting the practice. So if you buy animal products from animals that are raised in a conventional confined animal feedlot farm, you're supporting that practice, and in many cases you might see chickens that are stacked 10 high in cages that never get out of this little 1 foot square cage. They never see the light of day, they never step on the earth, they never see the sunshine, they never eat anything that's not put in their cage for them. So the food obviously is not going to be as nutrient dense when the vital health of the animal is so poor. Oftentimes they need to feed these animals antibiotics constantly because they're sick, because they're not living a normal lifestyle. They're living basically in solitary confinement. So, it's about supporting practices that you believe in. For me, buying non-GMO is a huge thing because you vote with your dollar. And if you're buying foods or products that you don't agree with how it's raised, you're supporting that practice. So it's just being, mindful of what you're buying and making ethical choices with your food and your personal care products. Many people are against animal testing. So obviously, if you buy products that are tested on animals, then you're supporting that. If you buy products that advertise that they don't do animal testing, then you're supporting that process, and you're, helping out a business that is doing things more ethically. So it's about keeping all of that in mind while you're shopping.
Okay, it's a lot of big responsibility.
It is.
Wow.
It is, but it starts with us, each of us, even though, in the overall picture, we're just a tiny little bit of it, but every one of us contributing a little bit will make a big difference.
Okay, chapter 7, the missing components of healing.
Yes, there are a number of things that I talk about in that section. One that I found to be very interesting is the belief, and that also goes into the next chapter.
Yes.
The belief in healing. That's something that's been lost over time. It's mindset, it's belief, it's realizing that there is another way. If you're experiencing any kind of health problem and you're not happy with the results that you're getting, realize that there's something that you're doing that's causing that. So oftentimes we think, oh, we catch a disease, we just caught cancer, or we, you know, caught this problem, or it just happened to us, we just are getting older, or we have bad genes. Well, I disagree with that. I think there's something that we're doing, and it's either a conscious decision, you know, maybe we're smoking, maybe it's an unconscious decision, maybe we developed diabetes, but we don't realize that our smart meter is causing that. You know, there's a lot of studies showing that it can increase your risk of diabetes and throw your sugar levels off. So it could be something you're not aware of. So it's just really about making the decision that you're going to find a better way to deal with it. When I first got into investigative coaching, it all started, I was a research scientist, and then I developed, in 1992, I was diagnosed with lupus. And I just decided, and there wasn't a lot known about it. At the time they said, oh, your maximum life expectancy would be 15 years. And, you know, I just said, no, I'm not buying into this. And I didn't realize at the time, but I kind of was setting myself up for the understanding that, you know, we do take control of our health. And when I said, no, I'm not going to have this, I just started looking for what sorts of things could be causing these symptoms, you know, what am I missing, and figuring out how to get around that. And I no longer have it. It's something that's supposedly not curable. And,
wow.
You know, I mean, and I've dealt with many different ailments over the years. I feel that part of my purpose is actually to experience things so I can figure them out and then help others with that information. So unfortunately, I've had to develop a lot of issues.
Really? You're kind of a guinea pig for us, huh?
I am. And with this technology thing too, and as I talk about in the book, I'm sort of like the canary in the coal mine. I've become ultra sensitive to everything, but it's so that I can figure it out and I can bring this information forward and help other people so that, you know, maybe it will shed light on something that's going on in their own life.
And maybe stop and think.
Yeah.
What leads us right into chapter 8, the power of belief.
Yes. And that's something that has been lost over time. Many cultures, hundreds and thousands of years ago, believed so strongly in belief. And part of that is just believing that you're already healed, that your body is amazing and can heal anything if it is given what it needs and if it is not given things that are harming it. So it's all about figuring out what is going wrong with your body and why, what are you doing, you know, taking responsibility for whatever you're doing that is impacting your health in any negative way.
You've given me so much to think about. My head is spinning. Self-care.
Yes.
That goes into that a little bit.
Yeah, self-care is so important. It's probably the #1 issue, and it's been the toughest lesson for me. I participated in a book, the cancer book there, where I just wrote a chapter in that book from the perspective of someone who works with people who have cancer. And the proceeds of that book go to the Teddy Bear Cancer Foundation, and they developed a deck of cards for people for their fundraisers and everything. And they took a quote from each author. And the quote that they took from my chapter was, "Self-care is not selfish." And when I was flipping through the deck, they sent me a doc and I was looking through it and I saw my quote and I was like, wow, did I write that? Yeah. That's probably the lesson I need most. You know, it's like, especially as a mom or as a parent, you know, you're putting everyone else first and you don't take care of yourself, you know. And for me, I was finding I was taking care of everyone else and not doing anything for myself. So it was a really harsh lesson for me that self-care was critical, very critical, you know, life or death. And most of us ignore our own needs if we're helping take care of others. So that's just something that, you know, I go into detail on and how important it is to take time for yourself.
Okay, spiritual practice, did we get to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are a lot of things that I discuss in that chapter as well, but you know, the main thing is having some sort of spiritual practice. That's something that a lot of people don't contribute when they think about health and healing, but it's a very important part, probably one of the most important parts.
This is very important, finding another way.
Yeah. that's what it's all about.
Yes, it
really.
is.
It's all about
When you
finding,
listen to all this,
finding
yeah.
another way, taking responsibility and figuring out what way is right for you. I offer a lot of suggestions in the book.
Yes, you do.
But I keep going back to that, what's best for you. Because if I tell you, oh, you need to quit this and this and this and this, chances are it's going to be overwhelming and you're not going to do it. So it's about what resonates with you, what feels right, taking a couple things from the book that you feel might be beneficial to you, or if something sort of triggers in your mind and stands out, there's a reason for that. So pay attention to the small messages that are coming from the universe to give you an important part of the component that you might be missing.
Integration.
Yep. And integration is pulling it all together, looking at all of these things, looking at your life, and how can you integrate some of these steps into your life that can help support your health.
If you're interested in buying Susan's book, I bought it on Amazon. Are there other places that you can?
Yeah, pretty much any online retailer will carry it.
Okay. Your information is overwhelming. It needs to settle. I need to think about it and go back to the book. And that's the advantage of having the book, is that you can refer to it and really sit down and maybe one chapter. It's just so much information, and it's beautifully written and very understandable. So that's important to me.
Thank you.
I really want to say this. This book is for those who want to be proactive about their health and want to make the best, most informed choices they can make to live the best life possible.
Yep, that's what it's all about. We're here for, a short period of time, and we have to make the best of it. And we want to live a long, healthy life. We don't want to, live a long life and be, in a nursing home for the last 20 years.
Really.
It's like we want to be, well into our 8th, 9th decade and being able to, be active and have a clear mind and that sort of thing. So yes, absolutely, proactivity is key.
I wanted to say something too. We're certainly not negating going to a doctor or seeing a professional physician by any stretch of the imagination. If you're not well, you have something to go and see the doctor. This is complementary information to go over and above doing for yourself. See professional help, but certainly step in and take care and take ownership of what needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Susan, thank you so very much for coming here. You've been a wealth of knowledge. It's overwhelming information. Your book is fantastic, as I'm sure the other ones. And you're number 11. Tell me about number 11.
Yes. I have a mock-up of number 11 here. It's called Tormented by Technology. And because of the fact that my health is on this roller coaster, because it's so hard to get out of technology, so my 3 sons are co-authoring this book with me, so that's very exciting. So the 4 of us are writing it together to give people an understanding of how technology harms our health, how it affects us, and also what it's like to develop a hypersensitivity to electronics. And research has shown that, depending on which study and which country did the research, anywhere from 3 to 15% of the population is being severely physically impacted by technology. Most of them don't know it. They might be having, being treated for lymphoma or leukemia or, some other serious illness, and they don't realize that it's a sensitivity to electronics. So this book is about figuring out some of the things that might be harming you, kind of identifying with some of the symptoms that you might have, and then also my sons provide perspective on what it's like for them, and
because they're all young men.
Yep, and very much into technology. And so how it is for them, like the things that they experience, and then also living with someone who's hypersensitive, about being mindful about using your devices and that sort of thing. And then I also interview many other people in the book, other people who have reached out to me. I've had 12 people since I wrote this book with the chapter on technology. I've had 12 people who have reached out to me that have read this book, who have said, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm experiencing. So I've worked with them a bit and have interviewed them for the book, just to kind of share some of the things that they're experiencing. So we're pulling together some research. I'm doing research now for a university that is trying to stop the rollout of 5G, because the 5th generation of cellular technology, which is 5G, that infrastructure is already rolling out. You can see little white antennas on top of all the telephone poles throughout Palos and many areas.
Really?
And that is going to use millimeter waves, which are going to cause a lot of damage. And because the waves are so small, the frequencies are so small, that they will need to install these antenna pretty much every block. So, there's going to be a lot more people being impacted when this technology rolls out. So the university is actually trying to stop the rollout of 5G. So I'm reviewing scientific studies. I've reviewed over 500 studies so far who have showed damage by 5G or by, other types of radio frequency radiation. So just trying to share some of that information in this new book that's coming out. And that one, it will be released February 22nd of 2019, so just around the corner.
You are one busy lady.
Yes.
If you'd like to hear research about Susan more than that, her website is www.tapintobalance.com, and that's all one word, tapintobalance.com. So you can read more about her. She has a website. There's all sorts of ways that they can reach you. If they'd like to make an appointment with you, that can all be found out through the website.
Yes.
I'm sorry to keep saying website. But it is today's world.
Right.
Again,
and we can do it with wires.
That's it. And thank you for the
safe.
technology around here that's filming us and is going to put it on your television set. So there you go. Again, thank you. And of course, thank you for watching us here at Palos Heights Community Channel 4.